The plate hit the floor before anyone could stop it. Not dropped. Thrown. The sound of it, ceramic shattering against the kitchen tiles of Ember restaurant, cut through the noise of a full Friday service like a blade. Every hand in the kitchen froze. I found the woman standing in the middle of the floor in a gold dress that cost more than most people's rent, chest heaving, finger pointed at Nadia like a loaded weapon. "You," the woman said. "You are finished. Do you understand me? Finished." Nadia did not move. She was standing at the pass with a garnished tweezer still in her hand, a plate of saffron-braised lamb in front of her, and an expression on her face so calm it was almost provocative. She looked at the broken ceramic on her kitchen floor. She looked at the woman. She set the tweezers down. "That piece," she said quietly, "is 80,000 won. I'll need you to pay for it before you leave." The woman made a sound that was not quite a word. "And I'm going to need you to lower your voice," Nadia continued, "or leave my kitchen. You're holding up my service." The woman stepped forward. "Do you know who I am?" "You're someone who just broke my property," Nadia said. "That's the only relevant fact right now." The kitchen was so silent you could hear the jollof rice simmering on the back burner. Yes, jollof rice, because Nadia Cole was Nigerian. This was her restaurant, and she cooked what she believed in. The 6 chefs standing at their stations were holding their breath as a collective. They had seen Nadia face down health inspectors, difficult investors, and a fire that broke out on the 2nd week of opening. They had never once seen her flinch. Nadia had built Ember from nothing. She owned every tile in that kitchen. But ownership meant nothing if the right people decided to make your life difficult enough. She was not flinching now. And then the kitchen doors opened again. And everything changed. If you are watching this for the first time, welcome. This channel is where love stories live. The real kind. The kind built on history and silence, and the things people do when no one is looking. If this is your kind of story, subscribe right now, hit the notification bell, and leave me a comment telling me you're here. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back to where this actually started. Because the broken plate and the gold dress are not the beginning. The beginning is a university library in Seoul, 8 years ago, and a girl who made the mistake of being unforgettable. Nadia Cole had come to Seoul on a scholarship that she had applied for without telling anyone, accepted without celebration, and packed for in a single weekend. She was 22 years old, the daughter of a Nigerian mother and an American father, raised in the gap between 2 cultures and fully at home in neither. She was studying culinary arts and food economics, a combination that made her academic advisor pause, and she intended to spend 3 years learning everything Seoul could teach her and then go somewhere and build something. She did not intend to fall into the orbit of Remi Seon. She did not intend a great many things that happened to her that year. She met him in the university library on a Tuesday morning in October, when she sat down at what she believed was an empty table and discovered, 2 minutes later, that half of it was covered in his books, Advanced Economic Theory, East Asian Market Structures, 3 notebooks in a handwriting so small and precise it looked like a different language entirely. He came back to the table with 2 cups of vending machine coffee and set one in front of her without being asked. She looked at the coffee. She looked at him. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "You've been here for 2 minutes and you're already frowning at page 40 of Keynesian theory," he said, sitting down across from her. "You need it more than I do." She stared at him. He opened his book. That was it. That was the whole introduction. His name was Remi Seon. He was the 2nd son of the Seon family, old Korean money, the kind that had been old for so long it had stopped needing to announce itself. He was studying economics, which was expected of him. He was also, quietly and without making a performance of it, one of the most intelligent people Nadia had ever sat across from. He argued with professors not to be difficult, but because he had actually read further than the syllabus and wanted to know what happened at the edges. He ate the same lunch every Tuesday, cold barley tea and triangle kimbap, with the consistency of someone who had found a system that worked and saw no reason to change it. He was not warm in the way that made people comfortable quickly. He was warm in the slower, more reliable way, the way that you did not notice until the day you realized you had been leaning on it for months. Nadia noticed on a Wednesday in February, when she was sitting in the library again, this time genuinely distressed about a practicum she had failed, and Remi sat down across from her, took one look at her face, and did not ask what was wrong. He simply opened his bag, put a triangle kimbap on the table in front of her, and said, "Start with that. Then tell me what happened." She ate the kimbap. She told him what happened. He helped her rebuild the practicum from the ground up over the next 4 hours. When they finally left the library at 11 at night, the Seoul cold sharp and clean around them, she had looked at him on the pavement outside and thought, "This person is going to matter to me." She had not realized how much. Not yet. Ember was not supposed to happen in Seoul. Nadia's original plan had been to finish her scholarship, return to Lagos, and open a small restaurant there, a place that married Nigerian cooking philosophy with the precision and seasonality she had been learning in Korea. The plan was clean. It made sense. It respected the boundaries between the life she had built in Seoul and the life she intended to return to. But in her second year, a small commercial kitchen space in Mapogu came up for a monthly rate she could almost afford. She looked at it on a Saturday morning. It had bad lighting, a gas line that needed work, and a back window that overlooked a convenience store. She stood in the middle of it for 20 minutes, feeling the particular pull of a space that wanted to become something. She signed the lease on Monday. She called it Ember because of something her mother had said to her once, that the most dangerous fire was not the one burning loudly, but the one that had been reduced to embers and was still going. Still hot. Still capable of catching. It opened on a Thursday with 12 seats and a menu that made the food bloggers who found it in the first month genuinely confused about what category to put it in. Nigerian spice logic applied to Korean seasonal ingredients. Fermented flavors, meeting slow heat. Jollof rice made with gochugaru beside doenjang soup ladled over yam. It was not fusion, fusion implied compromise. Ember was two complete food traditions in full conversation with each other, and the result was something Seoul had not tasted before. By the end of the third month there was a waiting list. By the end of the first year, Nadia had taken on 3 staff, expanded to 22 seats, and been written about in 2 food publications that she had not contacted herself. She had also, without fully tracking how it happened, become someone Seoul knew. Not famously, quietly. The way the best things in a city get known, word of mouth, one honest recommendation at a time. Remi came in on a Thursday night in that first year, alone at the end of service. She was wiping down the pass when she looked up and found him at the door, reading the menu card in the window. She watched him read it. Watched him decide. He pushed the door open and sat down at the last empty table. She went over herself. "You opened a restaurant," he said. He looked up at her, and for a moment the 2 years of library tables and Tuesday lunches and late-night study sessions were all in the air between them at once. "I did," she said. "It smells extraordinary." "It tastes better," she said. He ordered everything on the menu. Not to be excessive, she understood, watching him, that he was learning it. Each dish with full attention. Notes made in his phone. When she came to clear the last plate, he looked up and said, very simply, "You made something real." "I tried," she said. "No," he said. "You didn't try. You made it. There's a difference." He paused. "I'll be back." He was. Every Thursday. Same table. Same barley tea. Always the last customer of the evening, and always, eventually, the reason Nadia found herself still sitting in her own restaurant long after she should have gone home, talking about food philosophy, economic theory, the nature of risk, the way Seoul was changing, the things they had both left behind and the things they had brought with them. She told herself they were friends. It was the kind of lie you tell yourself when the truth is too consequential to look at directly. In their second year of Thursday evenings, something shifted. It did not shift dramatically. There was no single moment she could point to, no declaration, no scene. It shifted the way seasons do, gradually and then completely, until one day you look up and the air is different and you realize you cannot remember exactly when it changed. She had started to notice the particular way he listened to her, not politely, not partially, but completely. The kind of listening that made you want to say the truest version of whatever you were thinking, because anything less felt like a waste of his attention. She noticed the way he always arrived exactly on time, never early, never late, as if he had calculated the precise moment she would be ready to stop being a chef and start being a person. She noticed that when something was wrong, when she had a bad service or a supplier let her down, or the loneliness of having built something beautiful in a city that was not her home pressed down heavier than usual, he knew without her saying so, and he stayed longer. And he talked about other things until the weight of her particular problem found its place. She noticed all of this. And she did not say so. Because Remi Seon was the second son of the Seon family, and she was a Nigerian woman on a work visa running a 12-seat restaurant in Mapogu, and she knew how those mathematics worked in families like his. What she did not know, could not have known, was that Remi had been sitting across from her for 2 years conducting his own private inventory of what he felt, reaching the same conclusion every Thursday, and saying nothing for his own set of reasons that had nothing to do with the ones she was imagining. They were both waiting for permission that neither of them had thought to simply give themselves. And into that gap, Jade Kwon moved. Jade had been close to the Seon family for 3 years by the time Nadia opened Ember. She was Korean, 42, a consultant who had built a reputation for being useful to powerful families in the kind of ways that did not appear on a CV. She was precise, socially fluent, and she had positioned herself, with great patience and great care, in the specific blind spot between Remi and his family that a woman with intentions tends to occupy when the man in question is too focused on other things to notice the architecture being built around him. She found out about Nadia the way careful people find out about things, not through drama but through attention. A food article. A tagged photograph. A name repeated in a context that sharpened her interest. She visited Ember on a Tuesday afternoon, early, when Nadia was prepping alone. She sat at the bar and ordered tea and watched Nadia work with the eyes of someone conducting an assessment. "You're very good," she said. Nadia looked up. "Thank you. Remi talks about this place," Jade said. "He mentions it often." "He's a loyal customer," Nadia said carefully. "Yes," Jade said. "He is." She smiled with only her mouth. "He's loyal to most things that matter to him." She left a generous tip. She did not come back. But from that Tuesday onward, Jade Kwon was paying attention in the specific and dangerous way of someone who has identified a variable they intend to remove. By their 3rd year, Nadia knew she was in love with Remi Seon. She knew it the way you know things you have been trying not to know all at once, on an ordinary evening, without warning. He had said something funny, genuinely funny, the dry, precise humor he deployed rarely and therefore devastatingly, and she had laughed. And he had watched her laugh with an expression that lasted only half a second before he replaced it with his usual composure, but half a second was enough. She saw it. She knew what it was. And she knew that she felt the same. She spent 3 weeks deciding what to do with that knowledge. In the end, she decided to tell him. Not in the restaurant, not in her professional space, where the power dynamic was hers, and therefore the risk was diminished. She would go to him. She would go to his apartment on a Sunday morning, the way you go to someone when you mean it, without the buffer of a business context, and she would simply say the thing. She went on the last Sunday of March. She knocked for 20 minutes. He was not there. She pushed a note under his door. 4 sentences. She had written it 9 times before she wrote the version she was willing to leave. It said, "I came to tell you something. You weren't here. I am leaving Seoul next week, a family situation that cannot wait. What I came to say is that these 3 years have mattered more than I know how to say in a note. I hope you know some of it already." She flew to Lagos the following Friday. She did not hear from him. She told herself this was information. She rebuilt her life around the silence. She opened a second iteration of Ember in a new neighborhood after the first lease ended, larger, better, the restaurant she had always been building toward. She worked. She grew. She missed him with the specific quiet persistence of someone who has accepted that a thing is over while never quite believing it. She did not know, for 8 years, that she had never actually said goodbye. She did not know that Jade had been there that Sunday morning. That Jade had found Remi 20 minutes after Nadia left and told him that Nadia had asked her to pass on a message, that she was grateful, that she was ready to move on, that she wanted a clean break. That jade had watched the note disappear behind the radiator when a draft caught it and had said nothing. Had simply stood there and let the distance between them become permanent. 8 years. And then one Friday night, a woman in a gold dress threw a plate on the floor of Nadia's kitchen, and a man walked through the front door of Ember restaurant and stopped. He sat at the corner table. He did not wave her over. He did not check his phone. He simply sat in the particular stillness that was Remi Seon's way of occupying space, fully present, completely contained, as if waiting was not something that cost him anything. Nadia finished the service. It took 40 minutes. She plated every remaining order with the same precision she always brought, spoke to the kitchen with the same steady authority, and gave no outward sign that the person sitting at table 9 had just reordered 8 years of her interior life. When the last plate went out, she washed her hands, removed her apron, and walked through the swing doors into the dining room. She sat down across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The restaurant murmured around them, the last tables finishing their meals, soft music, the particular warmth of a Friday that had gone well. None of it felt relevant. "You found me," she said. "I found you," he said. "How long have you been in Seoul?" "I walked past this street 3 times before I stopped." A pause. The menu card in the window. "Your name?" He looked at her steadily. "Nadia Cole, executive chef and proprietor." "You always said you would open something." "I said a lot of things," she said. "You went quiet," he said. Simply. Not an accusation, a fact. She looked at her hands on the table. "I had reasons." "I know," he said. "Or I thought I did. For 8 years I thought I understood why you left without." He stopped. Recalibrated. "I would like to understand properly. If you are willing." She looked at him. He was 37 now, and it suited him, the same stillness, the same precision, but settled in a way that the 28-year-old version of him had been working toward. The boy who had put vending machine coffee in front of a stranger because she looked like she needed it had become a man who simply knew things and acted on them without requiring permission from the world. She felt the specific ache of recognizing someone. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "After service. We'll talk properly." He nodded once, as if that had already been his intention. He came back every day for 2 weeks. He sat at the corner table and he ordered barley tea with ginger, the same thing he had ordered every Tuesday for 3 years, a decade ago, and Nadia had added barley tea to the Ember menu 18 months prior for reasons she had not fully examined. And when Claude brought him the first cup and reported the order back to the kitchen, she stood at the pass for a moment with her eyes closed. She prepared it herself. Their conversations began carefully, the way all real conversations begin at the surface, testing the load-bearing capacity of each exchange before going deeper. He told her about Seoul Capital's expansion into East Asian markets, the particular difficulty of leading an organization that had been shaped by your father for decades before you arrived. She told him about the rebuild of Ember after the first lease ended, the 2 years of near failure, the staff member who had stayed through the hard months and was now her head chef. They spoke about Seoul, what it had become, what remained. They spoke about food with the depth of 2 people who understood it as a form of philosophy. And, underneath all of it, threading through every conversation like a current they had agreed not to name yet, was the fact of what had existed between them and the question of what had interrupted it. On the 8th evening, he arrived with a split knuckle on his right hand. Fresh. He had cleaned it but not dressed it properly, and it had reopened on the walk from his car. Nadia looked at it when he sat down. She did not ask. She went to her office and returned with a first aid kit. She sat beside him instead of across from him, took his hand in both of hers, and cleaned the wound again, properly this time, with antiseptic that made him draw a short breath, before dressing it with the efficient care of someone for whom caring for people was not a performance, but a reflex. He watched her face the entire time. When she finished, she began packing the kit away without releasing his hand immediately. He noticed. She noticed that he noticed. "You never ask," he said. "I know which questions you won't answer yet," she said. "Most people ask anyway. Most people want to feel involved," she said. "That's not the same as actually wanting to know." She looked up at him. "I want to know. So I wait until you're ready." He was quiet for a long moment. In Seoul, he said slowly when we were at Yonsei. I used to wonder whether you were genuinely this calm about everything or whether you were very good at appearing calm. Both, she said. Depending on the day. His thumb moved almost imperceptibly across the back of her hand. Nadia. Remi. I missed you, he said. 8 years is a long time to miss someone without fully understanding why they went. She looked at him. The restaurant was empty now. The last table had cleared 20 minutes ago and neither of them had moved. The kitchen had gone quiet. The Seoul night pressed cold and clear against the windows. I went to your apartment, she said. The Sunday before I flew home. I knocked for 20 minutes. His expression shifted. Something carefully maintained and it gave way slightly. I wasn't there, he said. There was a family matter that morning. I was gone for 3 hours. I know, she said. I left a note. He was very still. I never received a note. I pushed it under the door, she said. Neither of them spoke. The weight of 8 years of a false story hung in the air between them, not cruel, not loud, just present. Like a room where the furniture had been arranged by someone who knew exactly what they were blocking. Jade was there that morning, Remi said. His voice was quiet and careful in the way of someone piecing something together in real time. She came to the apartment while I was still out. She said she had run into you. That you had asked her to pass on a message. He stopped. She said you were grateful for the time in Seoul, but you were ready to move on. That you wanted a clean break. Nadia looked at him steadily. I never spoke to Jade that morning, she said. I never asked her to pass on anything. The silence was absolute. The note, he said. Behind the radiator, she said. I watched the draft catch it when I pushed it through. I thought it would be fine. I thought you would find it. I found it 6 months later, he said. It had slipped behind the heating unit. I thought, he stopped again. His jaw tightened briefly and released. I thought you had written it before you changed your mind. I thought the message through Jade was the final decision, and the note was the version you had reconsidered. She watched him sit with what that meant. She had already spent 3 days sitting with it herself from the moment he had first mentioned Jade's name. Something in her had begun to understand the architecture of what had been done to them. But hearing it confirmed, hearing it in his voice, in the particular quality of a man who did not allow himself to be visibly undone being visibly undone, that was its own thing to absorb. Jade Kwan, Nadia said carefully, made a decision for both of us. Yes, he said. She did. He reached across the table and took her hand. Both of hers, the way she had held his. His grip was careful and certain. I am sorry, he said. I should have come sooner. I should have. You're here now, she said. He looked at her. In the low light of the empty restaurant, with the Seoul cold outside and the kitchen dark behind her, Remi Seon looked at Nadia Cole with an expression she recognized, the one she had glimpsed for half a second years ago when she laughed. The one he had replaced so quickly she had almost talked herself out of having seen it. He was not replacing it now. He leaned across the table and kissed her. Slowly. The way you kiss someone when you are not trying to rush past 8 years, but to acknowledge every single one of them. She held very still for one breath, and then her hand came up to the side of his face, and the restaurant, the service, the broken plate, the gold dress, all of it fell away completely. Outside, in the shadow of the building across the street, a phone screen lit briefly. A shutter clicked twice. Then the screen went dark. Remi found Jade on a Monday morning. He did not make an appointment. He walked into the building where she kept a consultancy office 3 streets from Seoul Capital's Seoul headquarters, and he was in her office before her assistant had finished standing up to stop him. Jade was at her desk. She looked up. She saw his face. She set down her pen. He sat across from her, and he placed everything on the table between them, the morning at his apartment, what she had told him, what she had told Nadia, the note, the radiator. The 6 months he had spent believing something that had been manufactured entirely from her decision to act. He did not raise his voice once. You made a choice, he said, that was not yours to make. You were building something important, she said. Her voice was measured, but her hands were still in the particular way of someone holding themselves together by effort. She was leaving the country. I thought. You thought removing her was useful to you, he said. I understand the reasoning. I even understand why you believed it was justified. What I need you to understand is that it was not. You took 8 years from both of us based on a calculation that had nothing to do with either of our actual lives. He paused. That ends today. Remi, whatever arrangement you believe you have with my family, he said, whatever role you have been maintaining in proximity to us, that is finished. I am telling you this clearly and today, so that there is no version of this you can reframe later as a misunderstanding. She looked at him. And her. Her name, he said, standing, is Nadia Cole. She is the woman I should have spent the last 8 years with. I do not intend to lose another day. He straightened his jacket. He was almost at the door when he turned back once. You will be treated with courtesy by my family, he said. Because that is how I was raised, and it is not something I am willing to compromise regardless of what you did. But do not mistake courtesy for anything warmer. Those 2 things are finished. He left. Jade sat alone in the office. Her assistant knocked at 10 minutes. Then 15. She did not answer. What was moving through her was not something she would examine here, in this office, in daylight, with the risk of being seen doing it. She folded it precisely and put it somewhere she would deal with later. Outside, Seoul carried on in its ordinary Monday way, indifferent to what had just been settled inside a small office on the 3rd floor. Batch 4 of 4. Remi Seon found her brother on a Wednesday evening, standing in the kitchen of their family's Seoul apartment making tea with the focused calm of someone who is thinking about something entirely unrelated to tea. She sat on the counter the way she had since she was 12 years old and studied him. You confronted Jade, she said. Word travels, he said. Mother called me, she said. She didn't say much. She asked if I had met Nadia yet. Remi tilted her head. That's significant. I know, he said. She's not upset, Remi said. I want you to know that. Whatever Jade told her, and I think Jade told her quite a lot, with photographs, Mother's response was to ask about her family. She paused. That means she's taking it seriously. Not as a threat. As a reality. Remi poured the tea. Said nothing. I want to meet her, Remi said. You will, he said. Is she? Remi stopped. Chose her words carefully, which was not something she usually needed to do. Are you certain? Not the way you're certain about business things. The other way. He looked at his sister for a moment with an expression she had never seen on him before. Something that was not composed in the careful professional way, something simpler than that. Older. Yes, he said. Remi nodded slowly. She looked at the table. 8 years is a long time to carry something, she said. It is, he said. She hopped off the counter and kissed him on the cheek, which she had not done since they were children. I like her food. I've been 3 times. She doesn't know I'm your sister. He stared at her. She shrugged and left the kitchen. Madame Seon did not summon Remi. She waited for him to come to her, which he did on a Thursday morning, the same morning he had asked Nadia to prepare for the possibility of a family dinner, though he had not yet named it as such. He sat across from his mother in the blue chair room, where she conducted the conversations that mattered, and he told her everything. Not partially, not strategically, everything. Yonsei. The library. The 3 years. Ember. Jade and the note and the Sunday morning that had cost them 8 years. Madame Seon listened without interrupting. She had the quality of absolute attention that Remi had inherited from her, and she deployed it now fully, her tea going cold beside her, her face unrevealing. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Her father, she said. You said she was Nigerian-American. Her father's name. Cole Freeman, he said. He passed away. She was in her mid-20s. She doesn't speak about it often. Something crossed Madame Seon's expression. Not dramatically, she was not a dramatic woman. But something shifted, the way the surface of water shifts when something moves beneath it. Cole Freeman, she repeated. You know that name, Remi said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked past him, at something he could not see, something behind her eyes, in a year before he had been old enough to understand the shape of his parents' world. Your father will want to be present for dinner, she said. Make sure he is. Nadia arrived at the Seon family home on a Friday evening in a dress the color of deep water, simple, deliberate, nothing that was trying too hard. She had not consulted anyone about what to wear or how to behave. She was 32 years old, and she had built a restaurant from nothing in a city that was not her home, and she had survived 8 years of a grief she had not fully named until recently. She was not afraid of a family dinner. She was, however, aware of its weight. Yuna answered the door before the bell finished sounding, looked at Nadia with the bright, sharp eyes of someone who had been paying attention for months, and said, "I've eaten at Ember 4 times. The pepper soup is extraordinary." 5, Nadia said. "Claude described you to me. I recognized you the second time." Yuna stared at her, then laughed a clean, genuine sound. "I like you," she said. "Come in." The dinner began carefully, the way such dinners do, surface warmth, measured questions, everyone performing a version of ease that was not quite ease. Madame Seon was gracious and precise. She asked about Ember's sourcing philosophy, about Nadia's training, about Lagos in a way that suggested genuine geographical curiosity. Nadia answered everything directly, without embellishment, without performing humility she did not feel. Elder Seon, Remi's father, sat at the head of the table and said very little. He was 71, quieter than his wife, with a quality of stillness that Nadia recognized because his son had inherited it entirely. He ate with attention. He watched with more. It was during the third course that Madame Seon said, with the careful casualness of someone who had been building toward a question for an entire meal, "You mentioned your father was American. What was his work?" "He was in finance," Nadia said. "Corporate advisory mostly. He spent years across different markets, West Africa, the United States. He was in New York for a long time in the 90s. His name," Elder Seon said. Everyone at the table looked at him. He had not spoken in 40 minutes. "Cola Freeman," Nadia said. The silence that followed was not an uncomfortable one. It was the silence of something landing. Elder Seon looked at Nadia with an expression that was not quite recognition. Recognition was too small a word for it. It was the expression of a man seeing the continuation of a story he had believed was finished. "I knew your father," he said. "New York. 1994 through 1997. We worked on the same advisory board for an East-West market project." He paused. "He was the most honest man on that board. Possibly the most honest man I worked with in that entire decade." Another pause. He spoke about his daughter. He said she was going to build something the world had not seen yet. Nadia looked at Elder Seon. She felt the particular pressure behind her sternum that came when her father's memory arrived unexpectedly in a room. "He was right," Remi said quietly. Madame Seon looked at her husband for a moment. Then she looked at Nadia, and something in her face that had been held in careful suspension over the course of the evening was released. Not dramatically. Simply. "I am glad you came," she said. And she meant more than the dinner. After the meal, while Remi and his father were in the study in the quiet way of two men resuming a conversation that had many chapters, Madame Seon found Nadia in the garden. It was cold in the way Seoul in that season was cold, precise and clean, the air carrying the particular clarity of a winter that had not yet decided to fully arrive. Nadia was standing near the far edge of the garden with her arms folded, looking at the city lights between the buildings. "I owe you an acknowledgement," Madame Seon said, stopping beside her. "You don't," Nadia said. "I received photographs," Madame Seon said. "And a visit from someone whose agenda I understood within the first 2 minutes." She was quiet for a moment. "I have spent my life learning to read what is real from what is performed. What was in those photographs was real." She paused. "What Jade Kwan carried into my sitting room was performance." Nadia said nothing. "Your father," Madame Seon said, "used to say, 'Build something you are proud to hand to someone else.' My husband quoted it to me many times over the years. He never told me where it came from." She looked at Nadia. "You built Ember. You built it alone, in a city that was not your home, and you built it honestly." She paused. "You are your father's daughter." It was not an apology. It was something more structural than an apology, a recognition. A door being opened from the inside. "Thank you," Nadia said. They stood in the garden together for another few minutes, not speaking, the city humming below them, before going back inside. 3 weeks later, Nadia arrived at Ember on a Sunday evening to collect some documents she had left in her office. The restaurant was closed. The street was quiet. She unlocked the front door, pushed it open, and stopped. The dining room was lit. Not fully, just the low warm light of the candles placed on every surface, bare and simple, no tablecloths, just the dark which she had chosen when she furnished the place and had always loved. Soft music, low enough to feel rather than hear. The smell of something that was not on the menu, barley tea, she realized, already brewed and waiting. Remi was standing in the middle of the room. He was holding a ring. Small, simple, a single stone set without fuss, the jewelry equivalent of how he did everything. He looked at her across the candlelit length of her own restaurant with the expression he had stopped replacing. "I practiced what I was going to say," he said. "I had 3 versions. They were all too long." She pressed her lips together. Said nothing. "I lost 8 years to someone else's interference," he said. "I am not interested in losing one more day." He looked at her steadily. "I know what this is. I have known for a long time. I would like to stop knowing it privately." She crossed the room. She did not answer with words. She crossed the room and she stood in front of him and she took the ring from his hand and looked at it and looked at him and felt the particular fullness of a moment that has been earned rather than given, not a fairy tale, not a rescue, but something true and specific and built from the same material as everything else she had ever made. Patience and work and the willingness to believe that what was good could survive what was hard. "Yes," she said. His exhale was the most unguarded thing she had ever heard from him. He put the ring on her finger, and then both his hands came up to her face, and the restaurant, her restaurant, the one she had built on the corner of a Seoul street from a rented kitchen and a borrowed belief, held them. Claude, who had been waiting outside with the rest of the staff and had been explicitly told not to come in before the signal, heard the yes through the glass and gave the signal immediately. The doors opened. The staff came in. Someone produced champagne. Yuna was already crying and pretending she was not. Nadia laughed. Really laughed, the full, free kind that had nothing in it but joy. The wedding was on a Saturday in early spring, when Seoul was just beginning to remember warmth. The venue was small and deliberately so, 40 people in a clean, light-filled room that Yuna had found and Nadia had approved in under a minute. No elaborate staging. No excessive flowers. Just the people who had actually been present for the story, in a room that felt like a room rather than a production. Nadia walked in alone. She had considered every variation, a processional, an escort, a gesture toward tradition, and had returned each time to the same conclusion. She had built everything in her life alone, and she wanted to walk into this one the same way. Not because she was still alone, she was not, but because the walking was hers, and the arriving was the gift. She was steady. She was unhurried. She wore something the color of cream and carried nothing. Remi was waiting at the end of the room in a dark suit and the expression she had spent a decade learning to read. He watched her walk toward him the way he watched everything that mattered completely, without looking away. In the front row, seated with her hands folded precisely in her lap, was Jade Kwan. Nadia had known she would be there. Remi had told her 2 days before the wedding, quietly, without drama, "I invited her. I need you to know before you see her." And Nadia had been still for a moment, and then had nodded once, and that had been that. After the vows simple, true, each of them refusing to perform, Nadia leaned close to Remi and said quietly, "You invited her." "Forgiveness," he said, "is louder than revenge." She pulled back and looked at him. His face was perfectly serious. She laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not a managed, appropriate for the occasion laugh. A real one, the full, free, completely unguarded laugh of a woman who had arrived somewhere she had not been certain she would reach, and found it better than she had imagined, and felt the last 8 years settle into their proper place in the story, not wasted. Not erased, but necessary. The price of something this solid was always that you had carried it a long way before you got to set it down. The room filled with the sound of it. Remi smiled, not the almost smile she had catalogued over years of Thursday evenings, but the real one, the complete one, the one that changed his whole face. He took her hand. "If you enjoy this story, then do 3 things for me: subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment telling me your favorite moment from this story. And share this video with one person who needs to believe that what was taken from them is not necessarily gone.